The morning Katherine Grey arrived in Guthrie, Oklahoma, with her arms full of dirty linens and her voice locked away like a treasure she would never again unearth, she did not expect to find anything in the dusty frontier town except anonymity and hard work. It was April 1889, just days after the famous land run had transformed this patch of prairie into a chaotic settlement of tents and hastily constructed buildings, and Katherine had come here precisely because chaos meant questions went unasked. She had left behind the gilded opera houses of New York City, the gaslit stages of Boston, and the applause that had once filled her ears like rain, all because loving the wrong man had cost her everything except her life and the clothes on her back. The laundry she established operated out of a canvas tent on the eastern edge of the new town, where the Oklahoma Territory stretched endlessly toward a horizon that seemed to promise either freedom or oblivion, depending on the day. Katherine was 24 years old, and her hands, which had once been carefully maintained with oils and gloves for the delicate work of gesturing dramatically across a stage, now grew red and chapped from lye soap and scalding water. She scrubbed the shirts of miners and merchants, the dresses of dance hall girls, and the wives of ambitious businessmen, and she kept her mouth shut except for the pleasantries required for commerce. Nobody in Guthrie knew that Katherine Grey had once been Catherine Genevieve Ashford, the rising soprano who had performed at the Academy of Music, whose voice had been described in the New York Herald as a crystalline instrument of uncommon power and grace. Nobody knew that she had fled the city after her engagement to Charles Worthington III had ended not in marriage but in scandal, accusations, and threats. Charles had been a patron of the arts, with a fortune built on railroad speculation, and a temper that emerged only after Catherine had accepted his ring. When she had tried to break the engagement after discovering his cruelty, he had vowed to destroy her reputation and ensure she would never sing professionally again. He had made good on that promise through whispered lies to theater managers, withdrawn financial backing for productions, and carefully planted rumors about her character. Rather than fight a battle she could not win, Catherine had taken what money she had saved and disappeared into the West. The laundry work was punishing, but it was honest, and Catherine found a strange peace in the simplicity of it. She woke before dawn each day to start heating water in the large kettles she had purchased from a departing homesteader who had decided Oklahoma was not the promised land after all. She scrubbed and rinsed and wrung out garments until her shoulders ached, then hung everything on lines that stretched between wooden posts she had hammered into the prairie soil herself. The wind that swept across the open land dried clothes quickly, and Catherine would stand sometimes with her eyes closed, feeling that wind on her face, reminding herself that she was free even if she was alone. Guthrie was growing by the day, transforming from tent city to something more permanent as lumber arrived and ambitious men began constructing proper buildings along Oklahoma Avenue and Harrison Avenue. The sound of hammering filled the air from morning until night, punctuated by the shouts of workers and the occasional gunshot that reminded everyone this was still very much the frontier. Catherine kept to herself as much as possible, but she was friendly enough with her customers to maintain good business. She learned quickly which men paid promptly and which required reminders, which families needed their laundry rushed for a special occasion, and which of the dance hall girls would gossip if given half a chance. It was on a Tuesday in late May when Gabriel Nathan first brought his laundry to her tent. Catherine was bent over a washboard, working at a stubborn stain on a tablecloth, when she heard boots approaching and looked up to see a man standing at the entrance with a bundle of clothes in his arms. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of creek water in summer. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, dusty denim trousers and a worn shirt with a bandana tied around his neck and a hat that had seen considerable weather. There was something quiet about him, a stillness that seemed unusual in a town filled with men in constant motion. "Morning," he said, his voice low and polite. "Heard you do good work. I have some things that need washing if you have time." Catherine straightened, pushing a strand of dark hair back from her face with her forearm, keeping her wet hands away from her forehead. "I have time. What do you have?" He stepped forward and set the bundle on the table she used for sorting. Just some shirts and trousers. Nothing fancy. How much do you charge? She told him her rates, which were fair but not cheap, and he nodded without haggling. That is fine. When can I pick them up? Day after tomorrow, late afternoon, Katherine said, already mentally calculating her current workload. That work for you? That works fine. He pulled a few coins from his pocket and paid half in advance, which many customers did not bother to do. Name is Gabriel Nathan. I am working on the Norton Ranch west of town. Katherine Grey, she replied, taking the coins. I will have everything clean and ready for you. Mr. Nathan. Just Gabriel is fine. He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture that managed to be both casual and respectful, then turned to leave. Katherine watched him go, noting the easy way he moved, the way he seemed comfortable in his own skin in a manner she envied. She thought little more about Gabriel Nathan as she worked through the rest of that day and the next, though she did notice that his clothes, while dirty from honest work, were of decent quality and had been mended with care in several places. The man took care of what he owned, which spoke well of his character. When he returned on Thursday as promised, Katherine had his laundry folded neatly and wrapped in brown paper. Looks good, Gabriel said, examining the stack with an appreciative nod. You do fine work. Thank you, Katherine replied, accepting the remainder of her payment. If you need laundry done again, you know where to find me. I will be back, he assured her, and something in the way he said it made Katherine look up to meet his eyes. There was nothing improper in his gaze, but there was interest there, a curiosity that made her both nervous and strangely pleased. She was not ready for any man to look at her that way, not after Charles, but Gabriel's attention felt different somehow, gentler. He did come back 2 weeks later with another bundle of laundry, and then again 2 weeks after that. It became a pattern through the summer months as Guthrie continued to grow and establish itself. The town incorporated officially in August, and by then there were real buildings lining the main streets, including a proper hotel, several saloons, a bank, and even a church. Katherine moved her laundry operation from the tent into a small wooden structure she rented from a businessman who owned several lots along the eastern edge of town. The building had a stove for heating water and enough space for her to work more efficiently, and she even hired a young widow named Sarah to help with the heaviest work. Gabriel Nathan continued to bring his laundry every 2 weeks like clockwork, and gradually their brief exchanges at pickup and delivery began to extend into longer conversations. Katherine learned that Gabriel was 27 years old, originally from Missouri, and had come to Oklahoma Territory hoping to eventually claim land of his own. He was working for Samuel Norton, saving money and learning everything he could about ranching in this particular climate and terrain. He was thoughtful and observant, asking Katherine about her business and seeming genuinely interested in how she had established herself in such a new town. Takes courage to start something from nothing, Gabriel said one afternoon in September, leaning against the doorframe of her laundry while Katherine wrapped his clean clothes, especially for a woman on her own. You have family back east? The question was casual, but Katherine felt her spine stiffen slightly. No family to speak of, she said, which was not quite a lie. Her parents had died when she was young, and she had been raised by an aunt who had passed away 3 years earlier. There were distant cousins somewhere, but no one who would have noticed or cared when she disappeared from New York. I came out here for a fresh start, same as most people. Gabriel nodded, seeming to understand that she was not inviting further questions about her past. Fresh starts are good, sometimes necessary. What about you? Katherine asked, partly to deflect attention from herself and partly because she genuinely wanted to know. You have family in Missouri? Parents are both gone. I have a brother still back there, married with kids. Gabriel's expression softened slightly. We write letters sometimes. He thinks I am crazy for coming out here, but he is happy enough staying where he knows every road and every neighbor. Are you crazy for coming out here? Catherine asked, surprised by her own boldness. Gabriel smiled, and the expression transformed his usually serious face into something warmer. Probably. But I like it out here. I like the space, the potential. Every morning feels like something could happen. Catherine understood that feeling more than she could say. She handed him his package and accepted his payment, and after he left, she stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching him walk down the street toward where his horse was tied. Sarah, working at the washtubs behind her, cleared her throat meaningfully. "That man is sweet on you," Sarah said, not looking up from her scrubbing. "He is just a customer," Catherine protested, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "He is a customer who always finds reasons to linger and talk, and he looks at you like you are something precious." Sarah was a practical woman in her 40s who had lost her husband to fever on the journey to Oklahoma. She had no patience for self-deception. "Question is, are you interested?" "I am not looking for that kind of complication," Catherine said firmly, moving back to her work. "Complication or not, life has a way of happening," Sarah replied, but she let the subject drop. As autumn arrived and the brutal Oklahoma heat gave way to more temperate weather, Catherine found herself thinking about Gabriel more than she wanted to admit. She looked forward to his visits, prepared clever things to say, and felt disappointed on the weeks when he did not come. She told herself it was foolish, that she had no business entertaining thoughts of any man, especially not when she was still hiding from her past. But Gabriel made her feel something she had thought Charles had destroyed, the possibility that she could trust again, that not all men were cruel beneath their charming surfaces. It was in late October when everything changed. Guthrie was preparing for a harvest celebration, and the town's mood was festive despite the hard work most people face daily. Catherine had more business than she could handle, with people wanting their best clothes cleaned for the various gatherings and dances planned. She was working late one evening, Sarah having gone home hours earlier, when she heard singing coming from one of the saloons down the street. The voice was female, attempting an operatic aria that Catherine recognized immediately. "O mio babino caro," from Puccini's Gianni Schicchi. But the singer was struggling, the notes sharp and the phrasing awkward, and Catherine felt herself wincing at each mistake. Before she realized what she was doing, she began singing along softly, correcting the melody, her voice instinctively shaping the notes the way they were meant to be sung. Her voice, unused for singing in months, was rusty at first, but quickly found its strength. Catherine closed her eyes, letting the aria flow through her, remembering the countless times she had performed this piece, the way the audience would go silent with attention, the way the orchestra would swell beneath her voice. She sang quietly, just for herself, just to remember what it had felt like to be that person who commanded a stage. "Lord, have mercy." Catherine's eyes flew open, and she whirled around to find Gabriel standing in the doorway, his expression one of absolute astonishment. She felt the blood drain from her face as she realized he had heard her, had been listening for who knew how long. "I did not mean to startle you," Gabriel said quickly, taking a step inside. "I was passing by and heard the most beautiful sound. I thought maybe someone from the saloon had wandered down here, but it was you." "It was nothing," Catherine said, her voice tight with panic. "Just foolishness." "That was not nothing." Gabriel came closer, his eyes searching her face. "Catherine, that was the most beautiful singing I have ever heard in my life. Where did you learn to sing like that?" "Please forget you heard anything," Catherine said, turning away from him to busy herself with folding clothes that were already folded. "It was just me being silly. There is nothing silly about a voice like that." Gabriel's voice was gentle but persistent. "You have training, real training." "I do not know much about music, but I know that what I just heard was something extraordinary." Catherine felt tears threatening and blinked them back fiercely. "I do not sing anymore." "Why not?" "Because I cannot." The words came out more sharply than she intended. "Please, Gabriel, I am asking you as a friend to let this go." There was a long silence. Katherine kept her back to him, her hands gripping the edge of the work table so hard her knuckles went white. She heard Gabriel move closer, and then his voice came from just behind her. Quiet and careful. All right, I will let it go if that is what you truly want. But Katherine, I want you to know that whatever you are running from, whatever happened that made you stop singing, you are safe here. You are safe with me. The gentleness in his voice nearly broke her. Katherine turned slowly to face him, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. This was not just friendly interest or casual attraction. Gabriel Nathan was looking at her the way a man looked at a woman he was falling in love with, and the realization terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. I was an opera singer, she heard herself say, the truth spilling out before she could stop it. In New York, I performed at some of the finest theaters on the East Coast. My name was Katherine Ashford, and I had a career, a future, everything I had worked for since I was a child. Gabriel listened without interrupting, his full attention on her. I got engaged to a man who seemed wonderful at first, wealthy, cultured, supportive of my career. But after I accepted his proposal, he changed. He became controlling, jealous, cruel in small ways that grew larger. When I tried to break the engagement, he used his money and influence to destroy my reputation. He made sure I could not get work in any major city, spread lies about me to anyone who would listen. So I left. I took a new name and came here to disappear. I am sorry that happened to you, Gabriel said, and the sincerity in his voice made Katherine's throat tight. No one deserves to be treated that way. And I am sorry that someone stole your music from you. He did not steal it, Katherine said. I gave it up. It was easier to walk away than to keep fighting. Was it easier or just safer? Gabriel took another small step closer. Because from what I just heard, your voice is still there, still beautiful. Maybe he took your stages and your audiences, but he did not take the music itself. That is still yours. Katherine shook her head, feeling overwhelmed. I cannot go back to that life. Even if I wanted to, even if I could somehow rebuild what was destroyed, I am not that person anymore. I am not suggesting you go back, Gabriel said, but maybe you do not have to lock away something that is so much a part of who you are. Maybe here, where no one knows Katherine Ashford, Katherine Grey could sing again just because she wants to. I do not know if I can. Will you try? Gabriel's voice was soft, almost tentative. Not for anyone else, not for an audience or a stage, just for me. Will you sing for me, Katherine? The request was so simple and yet so enormous. Katherine looked at Gabriel, at this man who had somehow seen through her defenses to the person she had been trying to hide, and felt something shift inside her chest. He was not asking her to perform or to be the opera singer she had been. He was asking her to share something precious with him, to trust him with a part of herself she had thought was dead. What do you want me to sing? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Anything. Whatever you want. Gabriel pulled out a chair from beside the work table and sat down, settling in as if he had all the time in the world. I am listening. Katherine took a shaky breath, trying to decide. Not the aria she had been singing when he arrived. That felt too vulnerable, too close to who she had been. Instead, she thought of something simpler, a folk song her mother had sung to her as a child, before the opera training, before the ambition and the bright lights. She began to sing Shenandoah, letting her voice find the melody gently, without the full power she had once commanded, but with all the emotion she had kept locked away for months. As she sang, she watched Gabriel's face. He sat perfectly still, his eyes never leaving her, and she saw wonder there, and tenderness, and something deeper that made her voice grow stronger. She sang all the verses, her voice filling the small laundry with sound that seemed to transform the humble space into something sacred. When she finished, silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unspoken. That was a gift, Gabriel said finally. Thank you for trusting me with it. Thank you for asking, Catherine replied, feeling tears on her cheeks, though she had not realized she was crying. Gabriel stood and crossed to her, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket and offering it to her. Catherine took it and wiped her eyes, laughing a little at herself. I am sorry. I did not expect to fall apart. You are not falling apart. You are just feeling things. Nothing wrong with that. Gabriel hesitated, then asked, Can I be honest with you about something? Catherine nodded, still holding his handkerchief. I have been coming here every 2 weeks for months, and not always because I need laundry done. Sometimes I have been washing perfectly clean clothes just so I would have an excuse to see you. Gabriel's ears were slightly red, but he held her gaze steadily. I think you are remarkable, Katherine Grey. I have thought so since the first time we met. And now, knowing this about you, knowing that you have this incredible gift and this painful history, I think you are even more remarkable. Gabriel, I cannot promise you anything, Catherine said, needing him to understand. I am still figuring out who I am supposed to be now. I do not know if I am capable of trusting someone the way a relationship requires. I am not asking for promises, Gabriel said. I am just asking if you might be willing to spend some time with me. Not as a customer and laundress, as friends, and maybe someday as more, if that is what you want. I will go at whatever pace you need. Catherine looked at this man who had somehow slipped past her defenses without her noticing, who had heard her sing and asked for more, not because he wanted to possess her talent, but because he wanted to know her better. She thought about how lonely she had been, how much she had isolated herself out of fear, and she realized that Gabriel was offering her something she had not expected to find in Oklahoma territory: the possibility of genuine connection. I would like that, she said, to spend time with you, to see where this might go. The smile that spread across Gabriel's face was like sunrise, and Catherine felt an answering warmth bloom in her chest. He did not try to kiss her or even take her hand. He simply stood there smiling at her like she had given him something priceless, and Catherine thought that maybe, just maybe, she could learn to trust again. Over the following weeks, Gabriel and Catherine began courting with a care and slowness that suited them both. Gabriel came by the laundry almost every day after finishing his work at the Norton Ranch, and they would walk together through Guthrie, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in Missouri, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about his dreams of having his own land someday. She told him about her childhood, about discovering her voice in a church choir, about the grueling training she had undergone to become an opera singer. Gabriel never pushed her to sing for him again, but Catherine found herself wanting to. One evening in November, as they sat together on the small porch she had built behind the laundry, watching the sunset paint the prairie sky in shades of orange and purple, she began to sing softly. Just scales at first, warming up her voice the way she had been taught, and then moving into songs. Gabriel sat beside her, content to listen, and Catherine felt something she had not felt in a very long time: joy in her own voice. Do you ever want to perform again? Gabriel asked one night after she had finished singing a particularly complex aria from La Bohème. On a real stage, I mean. Catherine considered the question seriously. I do not know. Part of me misses it terribly. The thrill of performance, the connection with an audience, the way music can move people. But another part of me is terrified of being that visible again, that vulnerable. What if you could do it on your own terms? Gabriel asked. Not in New York or Boston, where that man could find you, but here. Guthrie is growing fast. We will have a proper theater soon, maybe even an opera house if we are lucky. You could sing here as Katherine Grey, and no one would have to know about Catherine Ashford unless you wanted them to. I do not know if Guthrie is ready for opera, Catherine said, laughing a little. Maybe not full opera, Gabriel admitted. But people here would love to hear you sing. There is a Christmas celebration planned next month at the new community hall. They are looking for entertainment. You could sing there just a few songs, see how it feels. The idea both excited and terrified Catherine. I will think about it, she promised. In the end, it was Sarah who convinced her. You have been given a gift, the older woman said bluntly when Catherine confided in her. It seems wasteful to hide it under a bushel just because one terrible man tried to take it from you. Besides, that cowboy of yours is right. People here would be grateful for beautiful music, especially at Christmas. So Catherine agreed to sing at the Christmas celebration, and word spread quickly through Guthrie. On the evening of the event, the community hall was packed with people, ranchers and shopkeepers and their families, all curious to hear the laundress who supposedly could sing like an angel. Catherine stood backstage, her hands trembling, wearing a simple but elegant dress that Sarah had helped her make for the occasion. Gabriel found her there, looking panicked. I cannot do this, she told him. There are too many people. What if they hate it? What if someone recognizes me? No one is going to recognize you, Gabriel said calmly, taking both her hands in his. And no one could possibly hate it because you are extraordinary. But Catherine, if you truly do not want to do this, you can walk away right now. I will make an excuse, and we will leave together. His certainty that she could walk away, if she needed to, gave Catherine the courage to stay. No, she said, squeezing his hands. I want to do this. I am just scared. Being scared and doing it anyway, that is courage, Gabriel said. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently. I will be right there in the front row, and I will be watching you the whole time. Sing for me, like you do on the porch. Forget everyone else is there. Catherine nodded, taking deep breaths to steady herself. When her name was called, she walked out onto the small stage, and the noise of the crowd faded as she looked out at all those expectant faces. Then she found Gabriel, sitting exactly where he said he would be, looking at her with such pride and love that everything else fell away. She sang Silent Night first, because it was Christmas and because everyone knew the song. Her voice, clear and powerful even without accompaniment, filled the hall. She saw people's expressions change from curiosity to wonder, saw some of the women reaching for their husbands' hands, saw hardened cowboys blinking back tears. She sang Ave Maria next, letting her trained voice navigate the complex melody with the skill that had once made her a star. And the hall was so silent she could hear her own heartbeat in the pauses between phrases. For her final song, Catherine chose Home Sweet Home, the simple parlor song that every American knew, but she sang it with all the emotion of someone who had lost her home and was still searching for where she belonged. As she sang the final notes, she looked at Gabriel and realized that maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to find her way home after all. The applause was thunderous. People stood, shouting their approval, and Catherine felt tears streaming down her face as she took a small bow. When she left the stage, Gabriel was waiting for her, and he swept her into his arms without hesitation. You were magnificent, he said into her hair. Absolutely magnificent. I could not have done it without you, Catherine replied, holding on to him tightly. Yes, you could have, but I am honored I got to be part of it. After that night, everything changed. People in Guthrie treated Catherine differently, with a respect that went beyond her being a good laundress. They asked her to sing at church, at weddings, at community gatherings. She said yes more often than not, and each time it became a little easier, a little more like the joy it had once been, rather than the terror it had become. Gabriel continued courting her with patience and gentleness, and Catherine felt herself falling in love with him in a way that was completely different from what she had felt for Charles. What she had felt for Charles had been based on infatuation, on the excitement of being pursued by someone wealthy and powerful. What she felt for Gabriel was deeper, rooted in trust and respect and genuine affection. He made her laugh. He listened when she talked. He supported her dreams without trying to control them. He was exactly the kind of man she had not believed existed. In February of 1890, Gabriel proposed to Katherine on the same porch where she had first sung for him after that night in the laundry. He did not have an expensive ring, just a simple gold band that had belonged to his grandmother, but Katherine loved it more than any diamond. "I love you," Gabriel said, down on one knee in the cold winter air. "I love your strength and your courage and your voice and your heart. I love who you are, all of you, the opera singer and the laundress and everything in between." "Will you marry me, Katherine?" "Yes," Katherine said, pulling him up to kiss him. "Yes, absolutely yes." They were married in April on the anniversary of Katherine's arrival in Guthrie, in the church where she now sang regularly. Sarah stood up with Katherine, and Samuel Norton stood up with Gabriel, and what seemed like the entire town showed up to celebrate. Katherine wore a dress she had made herself, simple white cotton with lace at the collar, and she had never felt more beautiful than when she saw the way Gabriel looked at her walking down the aisle. At the reception, held in the same community hall where Katherine had performed at Christmas, people kept asking her to sing, but Gabriel shook his head firmly. "Not today," he said, his arm around his new wife's waist. "Today, she is just going to be my bride and enjoy the party." Katherine loved him even more for that, for understanding that she did not always want to be the entertainment, that sometimes she just wanted to be a person at her own wedding. They spent their wedding night in a room at Guthrie's nicest hotel, which was not very nice by city standards but felt luxurious to both of them. Gabriel was gentle and patient, and Katherine felt safe in a way she had never felt with Charles. This was what love was supposed to be, she realized. This partnership and tenderness and genuine care. In the days and weeks that followed, Katherine and Gabriel settled into married life with surprising ease. Gabriel had saved enough money to make a down payment on a quarter section of land about 5 miles west of Guthrie, and they moved into a small house that the previous homesteader had built before deciding to try his luck elsewhere. It was rough living compared to what Katherine had known in New York, but she threw herself into making it a home with the same determination she had brought to establishing her laundry business. She kept the laundry running with Sarah managing most of the daily operations, and Katherine helped when needed while focusing more of her energy on their homestead and on her singing. Gabriel built her a small music room in the house, really just a corner of what would eventually be a proper parlor, but it had good acoustics and a window that looked out over the prairie. Katherine would practice there for hours, working through operas she had once performed and learning new pieces just because they interested her. Gabriel loved listening to her practice. He would come in from working the land, dusty and tired, and sit quietly while she sang, and the expression on his face made Katherine feel cherished in a way she had never experienced. This was what it meant to sing for someone who loved you, she realized. Not for critics or audiences who judged your technique, but for one person who simply loved the sound of your voice because it was yours. "Will you teach me about music?" Gabriel asked one evening after Katherine had finished running through a particularly challenging coloratura passage. "I mean, really teach me so I understand what I am hearing better." So Katherine began teaching him, explaining about keys and tempo, about how different composers approached melody, about the technical challenges of certain areas. Gabriel was an attentive student, asking thoughtful questions, and Katherine found that teaching him deepened her own understanding and appreciation of the music she had been performing for years. As spring turned to summer, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with a mixture of joy and terror. She had always wanted children, but she worried about how pregnancy and childbirth would affect her voice, worried about being a good mother when she had barely known her own mother. "You are going to be wonderful," Gabriel assured her, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach, "and whatever happens with your singing, we will figure it out together." Katherine's pregnancy was relatively easy, though the Oklahoma heat in the summer of 1890 was brutal. She continued working at the laundry through her first trimester, though Sarah scolded her for not resting enough. She continued singing too, adjusting her breathing technique as her body changed, fascinated by the way pregnancy affected her voice in subtle ways. In late autumn, Gabriel came home one afternoon with news. "Samuel Norton is selling off some of his land," he told Katherine. "I have been talking with him, and if we can put together enough money, We could buy another quarter section adjacent to ours. It would give us room to really build a proper ranch, to run enough cattle to make a decent living." "How much money?" Katherine asked. Gabriel named a figure that was substantial, but not impossible. Katherine thought about her savings from the laundry and about the small fees she had been collecting for singing at various events. "I have some saved," she said, "and I could do more performances, maybe organize a proper concert and charge admission." "I do not want you exhausting yourself while you are pregnant," Gabriel protested. "I am pregnant, not fragile," Katherine countered. "And this is our future we are talking about, our child's future. If I can help us build something better by doing what I love anyway, why would I not?" So in December of 1890, Katherine organized and performed in what was advertised as an evening of opera and song at Guthrie's new theater, a real building now with actual seats and a proper stage. She was 6 months pregnant and showing clearly, but her voice was as strong as ever. She sang selections from Mozart and Verdi, some traditional folk songs, and even taught the audience a few simple melodies they could sing along with. The theater was packed, and people had come from surrounding towns to hear the legendary laundress turned singer. Katherine stood on that stage, one hand resting on her rounded belly, and sang with all the skill she had learned in New York, combined with all the emotional depth she had gained through loss and love and new beginnings. The performance raised more than enough money to make up the difference they needed for the land purchase. After the concert, as Gabriel helped her down from the stage, he pulled her close despite her bulk. "I am the luckiest man alive," he said. "You know that, right?" "I am pretty lucky myself," Katherine replied, kissing him. Their daughter was born in February of 1891 during a late winter storm that kept the doctor from arriving until after the baby had already made her entrance into the world. Gabriel delivered his own daughter with Sarah's help, and Katherine would never forget the expression on his face when he held their child for the first time, tears streaming down his cheeks. "She is perfect," he breathed. "Katherine, she is perfect." They named her Rose because Gabriel said Katherine had sung like a rose smells when she was in labor, somehow finding the strength to hum through contractions to calm herself. Rose had her father's dark hair and her mother's eyes, and from the beginning, she had a set of lungs that suggested she might have inherited her mother's vocal abilities. Motherhood transformed Katherine in ways she had not anticipated. She had thought she might resent the time away from music, the exhaustion, the endless demands of an infant. Instead, she found herself singing more than ever, lullabies and nonsense songs, opera arias transformed into baby entertainment. Rose would go quiet when Katherine sang, her tiny eyes going wide with attention, and Katherine felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it was almost frightening. Gabriel was a devoted father, involved in Rose's care in a way that was unusual for men of their time. He changed diapers and walked the floor with her at night, insisted that Katherine rest when she needed to, and looked at his daughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. Watching him with Rose made Katherine fall even more deeply in love with him. As Rose grew from infant to toddler, life on the Nathan homestead settled into a rhythm. Gabriel worked hard on building up their ranch, and Katherine managed the household while continuing to sing at events in Guthrie and surrounding communities. Her reputation grew, and occasionally people from back east would write, asking if she was the Katherine Ashford, who had disappeared from New York. Katherine always declined to answer, maintaining her new identity and her new life. "Do you ever regret leaving?" Gabriel asked her one night as they sat together on their porch, Rose asleep inside. "The career you could have had, I mean. The fame." Katherine thought about it seriously before answering. "Sometimes I wonder what might have been different if I had fought harder, if I had not let Charles drive me away. But regret, no. If I had stayed, I would never have come here. I would never have found you. Never had this life, never had Rose. That career was someone else's dream, someone I used to be. This is better. Even though you wash laundry and clean chicken coops instead of performing at the Academy of Music? Gabriel asked, teasing gently. Especially because of that, Katherine said firmly. The opera world was beautiful but brutal. It chewed people up and spit them out. Here, I sing because I want to, for people who appreciate it genuinely, and I get to come home to you and Rose every night. That is worth more than any amount of fame. Gabriel pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. I just want to make sure you are happy. I am, Katherine assured him, happier than I ever thought possible. In 1893, when Rose was 2 years old, Katherine gave birth to twin boys, James and Henry. The pregnancy had been difficult, and the birth even more so, and the doctor warned Katherine and Gabriel that they should not risk another pregnancy. Katherine's voice was affected for several months after the twins were born, weakened by the physical trauma her body had endured, and she worried that she might have lost it permanently. But Gabriel was endlessly supportive, helping more with the children, hiring a woman from town to help with cooking and cleaning so Katherine could rest and recover. Your voice will come back when it is ready, he told her. And if it does not come back exactly the same, that is all right too. You are so much more than just your voice, Katherine. It took nearly a year, but Katherine's voice did recover, though it was subtly different than before. Deeper, richer in some ways, with a maturity that came from having lived through difficulty. She found that she enjoyed the new qualities in her voice, and audiences responded to the increased emotional depth in her singing. Life with 3 small children was chaotic and exhausting and wonderful. Gabriel expanded their ranch further, buying cattle and hiring a few ranch hands to help manage the growing operation. Katherine cut back on public performances, singing only occasionally at special events, preferring to focus on her family and on teaching voice lessons to a few students from Guthrie who showed genuine talent. One of those students was a young woman named Emma who had come to Oklahoma Territory with her family during the land run. Emma had a lovely natural soprano and dreams of performing professionally, and Katherine found herself playing the role of mentor, teaching Emma everything she had learned about technique and performance and the realities of life as a professional singer. Did you really perform at the Academy of Music? Emma asked one day during a lesson, having heard rumors. Katherine paused, considering how to answer. She had been Katherine Grey for so long now that Katherine Ashford felt like a different person entirely. But Emma deserved honesty. I did, she said finally. A lifetime ago, under a different name. But that life ended and this one began, and I have never regretted the exchange. What made you leave? Emma asked, curious and respectful. Someone tried to take music from me by making it painful, Katherine said carefully. So I left and found a place where I could make it mine again on my own terms. The lesson there, Emma, is that you should never let anyone else define your relationship with your art. Sing because you love it, not because of what it can bring you in terms of fame or money or approval. Those things are fleeting. The music itself is what matters. Emma took that lesson to heart, and Katherine was proud years later when Emma began performing professionally in Oklahoma City, singing not opera, but the popular music of the day, making a good living, and clearly loving every minute of it. As the years passed, Guthrie continued to grow and modernize. Electricity came to town in 1895 and telephones a few years after that. The Nathan Ranch prospered, and Gabriel became known as one of the most successful ranchers in the territory. Rose grew into a bright, curious child who loved music but showed more interest in horses and cattle than in singing. The twins were wild and rambunctious, keeping Katherine and Gabriel constantly on their toes. In 1900, when Rose was 9 and the twins were 7, Katherine received a letter that made her blood run cold. It was from a theater manager in Denver, asking if she would be interested in performing there. The letter itself was innocuous, but it was addressed to Katherine Ashford, care of Katherine Nathan, Guthrie, Oklahoma Territory. Someone had connected her current identity with her past. What if Charles finds out where I am? Katherine asked Gabriel, terrified. What if he comes here? Gabriel read the letter carefully, his jaw tight. Charles Worthington is not going to bother us, he said firmly. Even if he knows where you are, what can he do? You are a married woman with a family, living hundreds of miles from New York. He has no power over you anymore. You do not know him, Katherine said. You do not know how vindictive he can be. Maybe not, but I know this. You are not alone anymore. You have me, you have our children. You have an entire community that loves and respects you. If Charles Worthington shows up here, he will find himself very unwelcome very quickly. Gabriel took both her hands. Do not let fear of what might happen steal your peace, Katherine. You have built a good life here. Do not let that man take it from you, even in your thoughts. Katherine took strength from Gabriel's certainty, and she wrote back to the Denver theater manager, declining the offer, but not confirming or denying that she was the Katherine Ashford they were seeking. She heard nothing more after that, and gradually her fear faded. In 1907, Oklahoma became a state, and Guthrie was its first capital. The town celebrated with parades and speeches and festivities that lasted for days. Katherine was asked to sing at the official statehood ceremony, and she chose the Star-Spangled Banner and Oklahoma, a song that had been written specifically for the occasion. Standing on a platform with dignitaries and politicians, singing to a crowd of thousands, Katherine felt the weight of history in that moment. She had come to Oklahoma Territory as a frightened refugee, and now she was singing at the birth of a new state, a respected member of her community, surrounded by family and friends. After the ceremony, as they walked home through the celebrating crowds, Rose said, "Mama, why do people treat you so special? I mean, I know you sing beautifully, but it seems like more than that." Katherine considered how to explain it to her daughter. "I think people appreciate that I share something with them that I do not have to share," she said. "Music is a gift, and when you give it freely, people respond to that generosity. But also, I think people like a good story. The Laundress, who turned out to be an opera singer, that is the kind of story people enjoy. What people do not always see," Gabriel added, his arm around Katherine's shoulders, "is how much courage it took for your mother to start singing again, and how hard she has worked to build the life she has now. That is what I think is really special." Katherine felt tears sting her eyes and leaned into her husband's embrace. Even after all these years, he could still say exactly what she needed to hear. As their children grew older and more independent, Katherine and Gabriel found themselves with more time for each other. They would take long rides across their land, talking about everything from politics to philosophy to their dreams for the future. They still sat together on the porch most evenings, and Katherine still sang for Gabriel, sometimes opera arias and sometimes simple songs, and he still looked at her like she was performing just for him, which in many ways she was. "Do you remember the first time I asked you to sing only for me?" Gabriel asked one evening in 1910, their 20th anniversary approaching. "Of course I remember," Katherine said. "I was terrified and thrilled all at once. I thought you were going to think I was crazy, this laundress claiming to be an opera singer. I thought you were an angel," Gabriel said. "I still do. Katherine, these 20 years with you have been the best years of my life. You took a chance on a cowboy with nothing but dreams and hard work to offer, and you helped me build something real." "We built it together," Katherine corrected. "And Gabriel, you gave me back something I thought I had lost forever. You gave me music again, not as a career or an obligation, but as pure joy. You gave me a life where I could be all of myself, the singer, and the rancher's wife, and the mother. You never asked me to choose. Why would I ask you to choose? All those parts of you, that is who I fell in love with." Gabriel pulled her close. 20 more years would not be enough. I want a lifetime, and then another one after that. "Greedy," Katherine teased, but she held him tight, grateful beyond words for this man and this life. Their 20th anniversary celebration was a large affair, with friends and family coming from all over Oklahoma and beyond. Rose, now 19 and engaged to a young doctor she had met in Oklahoma City, helped organize everything. The twins, now 17 and about to head off to university, complained about having to wear suits, but secretly enjoyed the fuss. The party was held at their ranch, with tables set up under the trees and lanterns hung for when darkness fell. At the end of the evening, people called for Catherine to sing, as they always did at gatherings. She stood, ready to perform, but Gabriel stopped her with a hand on her arm. "Not tonight," he said. "Tonight I have a different request." He turned to the crowd. 20 years ago, I heard Catherine sing for the first time, and I asked her to sing only for me. She agreed, and that was the night I knew I was going to marry her. Tonight I want to return the favor." Gabriel, who had never claimed to have any musical talent whatsoever, began to sing. His voice was rough and untrained, and he could not quite hit all the notes, but he sang with such sincerity and love that Catherine felt tears streaming down her face. He sang Shenandoah, the same song she had sung for him that first night, and even though his version was nowhere near as polished as hers, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever heard. When he finished, the crowd erupted in applause and laughter, and Catherine threw her arms around him. "That was terrible," she said through her tears. "I know," Gabriel agreed, laughing. "But it was from the heart." "It was perfect," Catherine amended, and she kissed him in front of everyone, not caring who saw. As their children grew and left home, first Rose to marry her doctor, and then the twins to pursue their own paths, Catherine and Gabriel entered a new phase of their marriage. The house was quieter, the ranch running smoothly with their hired help, and they had time to focus on things they had put aside during the busy child-raising years. Catherine began composing music, something she had never had time for during her opera career. She wrote songs based on the rhythms and stories of Oklahoma, blending her classical training with the folk traditions she had absorbed over the years. Some of her compositions were performed at community events, and one was even published in a collection of Oklahoma songs. Gabriel supported this new creative direction enthusiastically, listening to rough drafts and offering honest feedback. "This part here," he would say, humming a melody back to her, "it feels like it wants to go up instead of down." And Catherine would realize he was right, his untrained ear somehow catching things her trained one missed. In 1915, as they prepared to celebrate their 25th anniversary, Catherine received another letter from her past. This one was from an old colleague from New York, a soprano she had performed with many times. The letter was kind, asking after Catherine's health and happiness, mentioning that the opera world had never quite been the same after her departure. The letter also included a brief postscript. Charles Worthington had died 2 years earlier, bankrupt and alone, his fortune lost in bad investments, and his reputation destroyed by scandals of his own making. Catherine read the letter twice, trying to process her feelings. She felt no joy at Charles's downfall, but she did feel a certain relief, a final severing of a tie she had thought was already cut. Gabriel found her sitting on the porch with the letter in her hands, staring out at the prairie. "Bad news?" he asked, settling beside her. "Not bad exactly, just news." Catherine handed him the letter and watched as he read it. "I thought I would feel something more," she admitted. "Vindication, maybe, or satisfaction. But mostly I just feel sad. Sad that he wasted his life being cruel. Sad that he hurt people, including himself." "You have a generous heart," Gabriel said, folding the letter carefully. "More generous than he deserved. But Catherine, this means you are truly free now. If you wanted to, you could go back to New York, perform under your real name again, reclaim everything." Catherine looked at her husband, at the lines time had etched around his eyes and mouth, at the gray threading through his dark hair, and she felt a surge of love so strong it made her chest ache. "I'm already free," she said. "I have been free since the day I walked into Guthrie with nothing but a bundle of laundry and a locked-away voice. This is where I belong, Gabriel. With you, always with you." Their 25th anniversary party was smaller than their 20th, just close family and friends, but it was no less meaningful. Rose came with her husband and their 3 children, Catherine's grandchildren, who called her Nana and loved when she sang to them. The twins brought their sweethearts, serious young women who fit into the family easily. They all gathered at the ranch, eating and laughing and sharing stories late into the night. Before everyone left, Catherine sang one final song, a composition of her own that she had written specifically for this anniversary. It was called Home, and it told the story of a woman who traveled far to find where she belonged, who lost everything and found something better, who learned that home was not a place but a person. She sang it looking at Gabriel, and by the end, there was not a dry eye in the room. "That was our story," Gabriel said later, after everyone had gone and they were alone together. "That is our story," Catherine confirmed, "and it is not finished yet." They had many more years together, years filled with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with the continued growth of their ranch and Catherine's growing reputation as a composer. Catherine kept singing, her voice aging but never losing its essential beauty, and Gabriel kept listening, right up until the end. Gabriel Nathan died peacefully in his sleep in 1932, at the age of 70. He and Catherine had been married for 42 years, and his loss left a hole in her life that never quite healed. But Catherine, who had survived so much, survived this too. She continued living on the ranch, surrounded by family, still composing and singing, though never quite as joyfully as when Gabriel had been there to listen. When people asked her about her remarkable life, about going from opera singer to laundress to rancher's wife to respected composer, Catherine always told them the same thing. "The best decision I ever made was to start over. The second best was to let myself be found by a good man who asked me to sing only for him." Katherine Grey. Nathan lived to be 86 years old, dying in 1945, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of whom had heard the story of how Grandma and Grandpa had fallen in love. She died with Gabriel's name on her lips and a song in her heart, and when they buried her next to him on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, her grandchildren sang. They sang opera arias and folk songs, hymns and the compositions she had written, and their voices rose into the Oklahoma sky like prayers. The laundry she had started in a tent in 1889 was still operating in Guthrie in 1945, run by Sarah's granddaughter. The ranch Gabriel had started with nothing but determination and hard work was now thousands of acres, run by their children and grandchildren. But more than these physical legacies, Catherine and Gabriel left behind the memory of a love that had transformed them both, that had given her back her voice and had given him a partner who made him believe in possibilities he had never imagined. In the end, Catherine's story was not about fame lost and regained, or about running from tragedy to find redemption. It was simpler and more profound than that. It was about a woman who learned that she could sing for the joy of it without needing stages or audiences or critical acclaim. It was about a man who loved her enough to ask for something precious and to honor what he was given. It was about two people who found each other in the chaos of a land run and built something lasting together, note by note, day by day, year by year. The music Catherine made with her voice was beautiful, but the life she made with Gabriel was the true masterpiece. And long after both of them were gone, their descendants would gather on that ranch in Oklahoma and tell the story of the laundress who was revealed as a trained opera singer, and the cowboy who asked her to sing only for him, and how that request changed everything. They would tell it as a love story, which it was, and as a story about courage and second chances, which it also was, and as a story about how sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what truly matters. The Oklahoma wind still blows across that land, carrying with it echoes of songs long since sung, of a woman's voice raised in joy and sorrow and love, of a man's quiet request and a lifetime of listening. And if you stand very still on that hill where they are buried together, some people swear you can still hear it. Catherine singing and Gabriel listening, and the love between them made audible in melody and memory, forever and always, only for him.